Hello, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Lisa Bruffini, and I'm a Customer Success Manager here at NovoEd. And my favorite part of the job is being able to share the innovative work that our customers and partners are doing with the NovoEd platform. Today, I'm excited to share with you and introduce to you Ira Sager, the Vice President of the Center for Global Enterprise. And today we're going to talk about how CGE uses collaborative online learning to meet the needs of current and future business leaders all over the world and to close the management skills gap. So I'll kick it off with a brief introduction to NovoEd to provide some context, and then we will turn it over to Ira. All right. My slide here. Okay. So one thing that we're seeing across all of our partners at NovoEd is really that there's a massive wave of digital transformation going on in business and management training. And actually this is across higher education, corporate learning, and continuing adult education as well. Part of this is driven by a change in demographics and just a change in the modern worker today to being more digitally native, focused on mobile devices, demanding of content and learning anywhere and on the go. But it's also driven by cost. So budgets have remained flat at companies for learning, and there's a lot of travel reduction efforts going on, partly for cost and partly for environmental concerns. And adding on to this fact that the world is becoming much more globalized, and so companies are much more spread out, as well as having the gig economy and extended workforce, it's just become impossible to do executive education or business and management training the way it used to be done. But still, for a small portion of people, they're able to fly into a great in-person program, but the vast majority of organizations have been left unserved. And so that's why more and more corporate training and executive education is beginning to move online. Another big benefit of this is becoming more agile. So organizations typically used to roll out training with a train-the-trainer model, or exec ed used to have a training program a year in advance to try to get enrollment. And the problem is by the time the training actually hit the individuals, it had already been outdated. The case studies had changed, the companies that they'd written about had already gone bankrupt or IPO'd, and some within companies, the specific training was no longer as relevant. So being able to move that online and deploy training in a matter of minutes and then update on the fly is making it much more possible to be agile. And most importantly, to reach an entire organization, or in CGE's case, folks all over the world. So when you're able to take great in-person training and scale it online, so many folks who otherwise would not have had access can benefit. So, but what's surprising, despite that massive push that we're seeing across all of our clients, across every conference we go to, across all the industry reports, is that it's slowing down. And depending on what report you believe, somewhere between 80 and 50% of training is still left in person. That's the vast majority of training is still done offline, in person, with facilitated sessions. And that's surprising to a lot of people, but if you think about it, we've already gotten through the low-hanging fruit, a lot of compliance training, basic introductory skills, lecture-style courses. Those moved online fairly quickly through computer-based training, virtual instructor-led training, and other types of online courses, but really the important type of training, so leadership, executive development, industry knowledge, connecting with peers, innovation, design thinking, strategy, marketing, the list goes on. Those topics are still stuck offline. So why is this, and what can we do about it? Well, the first insight for us to really think about what makes for great learning, especially those higher order soft skills, it turns out it's really not lectures and traditional online courses. The way that we've traditionally learned how to be a better leader has been through in-person workshops. It has to be experiential. There needs to be collaboration and role play, feedback and mentorship and coaching, and someone needs to try something, fail at it, get feedback, and iterate from there. And so, kind of makes sense why so little of this has scaled online, because if you look at most online courses and online executive programs in the past, they've been designed to replicate, this model of lecture style training. And what we really need is for online learning platforms to replicate this experiential workshop model. And that's exactly what NovoEd does. So NovoEd is an online learning platform designed to replicate the experience of great in-person training. It's easy to stay on track with to-do lists, and sometimes that can work with you across mobile devices so that participants, learners, students can use any device anywhere in the world to access their content and collaborate with peers. And that collaboration is really the key. And what makes NovoEd so unique is that we're able to put people into teams and work together on projects, collaborate, get feedback, iterate within a small group, but then share that work out with the entire community. And so the content of the course becomes focused more on the team's work and on individuals' work rather than necessarily any content from the instructor. And if you think about great exec ed programs you've been in or great business school classes you've taken, that's what made them unique, right? That there was a small amount of seed content that started a discussion, but then the discussion sort of grew organically and people began commenting on each other's work. So this also really helps to improve motivation and accountability, because if you think about who you care most about, it's usually your peers. It's people in similar roles at other companies. It's your friends and colleagues at your current company. It's not necessarily a facilitator. And so NovoEd, by making this content available for the community, drives accountability. We also support a variety of feedback and mentorship models, both formative feedback and summative feedback. Oh, jumping ahead here. And in this example, you see an example of a peer evaluation. So being able to rate someone's work on a rubric and provide constructive feedback for how they can improve. And finally, you can't manage what you can't measure. And so because NovoEd enables a wide variety of new pedagogies, opens the doors for engagement. Slides are going crazy here, sorry. We've created an entire robust data analytics platform to measure and manage the engagement and the outcomes that are going on in the course. So we work with a variety of organizations that train professionals, and they really fall into two camps. The first are employee training and corporate leadership and development, usually within organizations. So clients there include GE, Comcast, Nestle, and the second are organizations that train others. So these are exec ed firms, training firms, nonprofits, business schools. So CGE, as you can see, IDEO, Deloitte, UC Berkeley Haas, and Stanford GSB. But today we're really here to focus on one of those, which is the Center for Global Enterprise. And we're going to talk about how Ira Sager, the Vice President of CGE, responsible for global learning initiatives, has been able to use collaborative online learning to lower the barriers to obtaining high-quality business education for folks all over the world. So with that, let me welcome Ira and turn it over to him.
Thank you, Lisa, and I want to thank NovoEd for this opportunity to talk about the Center for Global Enterprise. And I think as you see as we go through these slides and I talk about our approach, you'll understand why we use NovoEd, and you'll see that we check all the boxes, if not more, when it comes to experiential learning, collaborative, team-based, peer reviews. That is what attracted us to NovoEd, and really that is how we approach online learning. I'll start by talking a little bit about the history of CGE, how we were formed, and then get into a little deeper discussion of our programs, and then take questions at the end of this session. Happy to answer anything, any questions you have, and also you'll see there's more information, links to our website, and a few other resources for you to use. So the Center for Global Enterprise is a nonprofit organization We were about 4 years old, and we were started by Samuel Palmisano, the former chairman, CEO, and president of IBM. And Mr. Palmisano was going through, if anyone knows the history of IBM, they struggled with a lot of the issues that many large global companies struggle with. And that is new competitors coming up on the horizon that are faster, swifter, and a changing business climate. Today, you don't need many assets to start a business. We see companies today like Uber and Airbnb that are what we call asset light. And what is happening in to a lot of companies is they really don't have the management training or the research, the academic and also consulting research to help them shift to compete against these new business models that are emerging or the changing business environment. Today, we're in a global business environment where it's practically borderless. Thanks to technology and the internet, borders don't mean anything today. And the speed of business, although it is fast, it's constantly getting faster and faster, and companies need to adjust. And I think Mr. Palmisano and his fellow CEOs felt that they did not have the information or the talent to address the changing nature of global business today. So our mission for the Center for Global Enterprise is really, we are a nonpartisan research institute. So we're devoted to the global management, the study of global management best practices, economic integration, the contemporary cooperation, as I mentioned, that you're seeing today, and their impact on society, because if we could really improve the economic fortunes of individuals around the world, both in emerging markets and in established markets, then I think society benefits from all that. And our approach is, as you can see on this slide, we provide equal access, to we think is the most current and best management learning to anyone that's interested in business and wants to advance their knowledge and skills regardless of their physical location. We have, as you'll see later, we have members that span the globe. So what are our core initiatives? You'll see that here on the slide, we have research, global learning, which I'll get into a lot more detail, and we formed institutes. What we do at the Center for Global Enterprise is we're able to go to CEOs and talk to them and have conversations about where they're struggling and where they're finding they need more research, more help. And it's not just the management research, it's also the skills, the talent. And what we do is we discover the what I call pain points that they're facing. And what we have done is we assign research teamed with academic institutions, a lot of business schools, and we take on these topics that we know the CEOs are interested. And then what we do is we translate that to global learning opportunities. And you'll see as I go through this presentation, the links that we have to learning programs that come out of our research. And the institutes that we've formed, and recently last year we formed, and you'll see in more slides as I get into this a little deeper, we have formed institutes that allow us to do very, very deep research. But more important, allows us to do it in collaboration with companies that are members of this institute. The first institute we formed is on the digital supply chain. That was last year. We formed one last month on the Cyber Readiness Institute, and I'll get into that in a moment, talk a little bit more detail about those institutes. But first, I want to talk a little bit about some of the research that we've done. When we launched, one of the things that CEOs told us from both large and small companies is that they had problems with speed and scale. So the big companies said, you know what, we know scale, we've got scale, but we just can't do speed. We're not fast, we're bureaucratic, we're lethargic. The small companies said, oh, we've got speed, but we don't know how to scale. So we did a lot of research, you'll see here on this slide, leadership, global branding, government trust, that we thought were elements of what we call business models for speed and scale. This is to help CEOs understand how to position their organizations and also the kind of management talent that they need. You'll see on this list here too, platform business models. I think we've done some of the most detailed and early research on these business models around the world, not just in popular places like Silicon Valley, where you see Uber and Airbnb emerge from, but we've done analysis on these platform companies and business models in every region around the world: Asia, Africa, Europe, and the US. So we have a lot of research, and we've turned that into learning programs, which I'll talk about later. And you'll see in blue are the institutes that I'll get to right now, as a matter of fact. So the Digital Supply Chain Institute. You'll see from this slide these figures here that you'll understand why this is so important and attractive to CEOs. Supply chain is something that cuts across lots of industries, and it doesn't matter if you're in software development, if you're in financial services or professional services. You may not think you have a supply chain, but indeed you do. It may be people instead of widgets and parts. But as you see the figures on this slide, what we've done through our research, and this is this image here is our first research paper that we produced on digital supply chains, and our focus is on flipping, we call it the front side flip, and a term from snowboarding. If you're a snowboarder, you'll be familiar with it. And really what we're saying is you need to change the supply chain from focusing on cost and speed and really focus on the customer. But what we've discovered from our research is that these benefits of basically digitizing and transforming your supply chain really transfer into measurable and important advances in your reductions in costs, and also, as you see, a 10% increase in revenue. So that's very important focus of our research, current research, and the Institute's work is ongoing. We have another paper that is actually helping companies on how to implement its really transformation metrics that will help them to understand how they go about and actually work with, oops, I'm getting ahead of myself. Sorry about that. Let's go back. Oh, here we go. And the Cyber Readiness Institute, we just launched last month, and this is an interesting institute. Again, what we do is we work with corporate sponsors, corporate members. So the Digital Supply Chain Institute, for example, has 40 corporate members now, and that allows us to tap incredible knowledge and information and understand, again, from people who are actually in the business world facing these real world problems, what they need to do a better job or to enable the transformation to happen. Now, for cyber readiness, we have teamed with Create.org, another nonprofit, and as well as Microsoft, MasterCard, and Penny Pritzker, the former U.S. Secretary of Commerce under the Obama administration. And the Institute, the Cyber Readiness Institute, is really designed to focus on securing global value chains, which is certainly includes supply chains. But what we're doing here with this institute is focusing on developing the content, the best management practices and the tools to help small and medium-sized businesses improve their security. Because as you look at global value chains, one of the weakest links happens to be in small business organizations, because they obviously don't have as large a resource to dedicate to cybersecurity, and yet they are important in that they are a link in the global value chains, and that needs to be addressed. So that's our institutes and some of our research. Now, the Global Scholars Program, which is really what we're here to talk about today, and this is our program that leverages Novo Ed so effectively. We started the Global Scholars Program, as I said. One of the things that CEOs told us is that they did not feel that the talent they were hiring, people coming out of school today, had the skills that were up to date with today's business imperatives. So business schools and universities are doing a great job teaching people the basics. They're understanding finance, marketing, strategy. They've got all that down, but what business schools and most educational institutions lag behind is the current changes in business models. So what we have done is we've put together this Global Scholars Program to try and address the gaps in learning that we see. And we launched the Global Scholars Program in November of 2014, as you see in the slide. So we have 180 universities from 92 countries. They have, and individual members, we have about 3,500. They've all consumed over 200 hours of learning content. We'll describe some of that content in a moment. But what this is a worldwide learning community for anyone interested in business. And that includes students, academic faculty, and business professionals, mid-career professionals. So we are open to anyone who wants to learn about business. And let me talk a little bit about our philosophy, and I think this will resonate with what Lisa had said. You see the arrow on the right here, collaborative versus instructional. We really focus on what we think is the most effective learning, and that is applied, experiential, based on real-world problems, and highly collaborative. So our Alpha team, which is a virtual internship, that's 100% collaborative. The micro course, micro lessons, which I'll explain in a moment, are collaborative, and but a little less so. Expert Connects have an element of collaboration, but they are mostly instructional. So, just to go back and talk a little bit about our philosophy, if you've been through an MBA program, for example, they're famous for case studies. And their case studies are great, and they're important learning tools. But in a sense, they're a rear view. They're about something that has happened 5, 6 years ago. And CEOs today really want talent that can overcome today's business challenges, that are up on today's challenges. So what we do in all our learning programs is we focus on real business problems that companies are facing today. And we do include, and that will include, understanding the basics, finance, marketing, strategy, as I mentioned. But what I like about our approach, and what I think is unique, is that we layer something else on top of that, which is really important. And this is something that CEOs have told us they really need to see more talent that has better communication or better softer skills, if you will. So what we do is our programs reinforce the softer skills. They include things like communication, teamwork, problem solving, emotional judgment, professional ethics, global citizenship, innovation, also critical thinking, self-management, teamwork, and digital literacy. So I've given a whole laundry list here, but indeed, this is really the way we approach all our programs, because as you'll see as I talk about this, most of our programs break down into teams, which really reinforce the need for communication, judgment, both emotional and global citizenship. And that's the way I think that our programs have been most effective. So I'm going to start with probably our least collaborative, if you will, but we do it with a twist, and that is our Expert Connect webinars. So we bring together, obviously as the name suggests, industry experts in the field. And we did this webinar with actually our board of directors, because the board of directors had each contributed a chapter in a book we published last year called Growing Global: Lessons for the New Enterprise. And you'll see on that right-hand photo there, the board of directors for the Center for a Global Enterprise, and there's probably 300 years plus business experience sitting in those chairs. But what's really fascinating is above them is the screen. This is a live webinar, and we invited 6 member universities to bring their students together to ask questions of the panel members. And in that list of schools up there, you see we actually had a school from Cuba, China, Spain, the US involved in there. And the interesting thing in Cuba is that you'll see in the far left-hand picture, if you can make it out, Professor Sergio Rodriguez of the University of Gama is actually in the town square because the high-speed internet Wi-Fi connection is only available in a town square. And at the school, it wasn't strong enough to support this kind of video connection. And that's something that we obviously deal with when we talk to people all over the world. and have a lot of experience. In fact, one of the things we like about Novo Ed is the ability to present our information on many different platforms. And as I'm sure most people know, in emerging nations, the smartphone is the platform of choice. Okay, oops, I just keep going over a slide. Okay, online courses, you'll see here, these are two that we've done through Novo Ed, African Platform Management Strategy and Innovation, and also a micro lesson here on building trust. Just a little bit on the difference of micro course and micro lesson. We also believe that we need to keep our instructions short. So the micro course is 4 to 6 weeks. And the micro lesson is 2 weeks. That's not to say they're not intense, but we also think that to be aware of individual time and in the way we present our information, we think that these are very good timeframes for offering. So we try to balance with our courses, and I think this is something also that's a little bit unique about our model is we balance theory and practice. What does that mean? We, in the case of the platform management course, we had a mix of academic faculty teaching the course along with business practitioners. And I think that is really a great balance to provide a real life, a real world experience and collaborative learning and applied learning. And certainly all our courses focus on teamwork. Assignments, probably within the first week, we break people into teams, and assignments are team-based. Peer reviews are team-based. So there's a lot of reinforcement on what I said earlier about the softer skills. And here, just to dig a little bit deeper on Digital Africa Platform Management and Strategy, we actually ran this course twice. We did it once to test a closed environment, so we had 50 individuals in the first course, and then we opened it up, so we did open enrollment. And here you'll see, and this is another benefit, by the way, of Novo Ed, having the analytics. It's a great advantage to be able to have them produce this. So I picked out some of, obviously, the better ones, although we did very well with this course. I think all our courses are noted for their high social engagement. So we had 422 individuals sign up for this. The completion rate was 67%. So if you know anything about large-scale courses, what they call MOOCs, the completion rate is significantly lower, probably in the teens for most. We have a high completion rate, and I will credit the fact that our learning programs are extremely high touch. So even though we had 422 individuals there, with the instructors, we had a different instructor each week. We had 6 TAs, teaching assistants, helping the participants in the course, and 3 project managers on this as well. So one of the things we do and we focus on is having an environment, a teaching environment or a learning environment where there is a lot of support, and it's really broken down into small groups. And that's the way we approach learning. So you'll see these numbers here, they don't mean anything because there's no context, but if you take a look at the standard range, you'll see that for social engagement, total conversations, we averaged 4.7. The high end of the range at Novo Ed Experiences is 2.1, so we far exceed that. And the same for total team chats. 72, and in Novo Ed, the high-end experience has been 36. So we are extremely happy and thrilled at the experience we've had, because you're talking about a program, in this case, that was a 5-week course that's designed, and we had managers, executives, entrepreneurs, students, anyone who's interested in, again, improving their skills and learning about what is emerging as a new business model that is prevalent around the world. What was also fascinating about this course is that we did a survey afterwards, and about 20 people said that the course had helped them to switch jobs. And then another 20 said that the course was influential in their decision to start a new business. And in most cases, those were new platform businesses. So that we felt was an incredible endorsement for our program. And as I said, we're extremely happy and thrilled with the performance so far. We will have more courses coming up, and I'll talk about those. Whoops, I keep getting away from myself here. Let me go back. All right. Okay, and I just also wanted to point out that coming up, we will have online learning programs around digital supply chain. We're going to run a 2-week version of the platform management course that will be open enrollment, and we'll have courses out of cyber risk. Let's go ahead to now the Alpha Team. This is our premier program. It is a virtual internship, if you will. And what we've found is that, you know, most organizations, most schools will offer an internship, but they'll offer it for one student at one company. And again, you don't really get to experience the real world of business. Most companies, for example, if you're a global company, you have operations obviously around the world. You don't have a research facility only in Silicon Valley. You have research facilities all over the world, and your employees need to talk to each other, and you need to have employees from different operations within your organization talk to each other. And that's really what the Alpha Team does. And you see from this slide our 5 sponsors so far. We've done 5 programs. We're in the process of doing additional programs. And again, London Taxi Company, the National Football League in the US, London Taxi Company, and I'll get into a little more detail for that one. We see Rosello here, a Tanzanian enterprise software company, and Jobberman is the leading jobs website in Nigeria. Carbon 3D is a Silicon Valley-based startup that is in the 3D printing systems business. And Carbon actually asked the team to come up with a plan and a strategy for entering the spare parts market. They wanted us to identify opportunities in particular industries and companies within those industries in several markets: Japan, the US, and Germany, UK. And that's what the team did. And I'll talk a little bit about the Alpha Team. So what is an Alpha Team? You know, it is what we call a virtual internship. Everything is done online. What we do is we pull up to 21 participants from different organizations, cultures, work experience. They come together for a 6-week program to solve a real-world business problem for a company sponsor. And as I mentioned, in the case of Carbon, they wanted to know about the spare parts market. Rosello, the Tanzanian enterprise software company, they wanted to understand how do they break out beyond Tanzania. And Jobberman, the jobs website in Nigeria, they wanted to understand how do we add more educational learning programs so that we can improve the skills of people who are applying for jobs through our website. And you'll see that this is, as the slide indicates, it's a very global, high-touch program, and what we do is we work very closely with the company sponsor. The team members, 50% of the team is typically students. The rest of the team members are built up or based on business professionals, academic faculty, and as I mentioned, the entire program is conducted in a collaborative learning environment. It's all done online through NovoEd, and what we do with these Alpha Teams is, as I mentioned, we have lots of, and you see here's the global reach of the program. This is the London Taxi Company. The participants that we pulled together come from 5 different continents, 15 different countries. I think the languages they spoke, about 25 different languages. And for those of you who actually count up, you'll see that there are 20 photos here. And that is because we run this program. It's a very intense program. And after 1 week, if we see you're not participating, you're out. So, and that's what happens. The team goes down 1 member. Fortunately, we have been, I think, lucky in selecting the members for Alpha Teams, and we've never had to go down more than 1 or 2 participants. But as I mentioned, it is a very intense program. And you'll see here that this is an image we captured off of our Zoom web conference that we used. But I like this slide because it really shows you again how intense this program is. We typically work with 3 mentors, and we break the teams into sub-teams, 7-member sub-teams. The mentors meet with their sub-teams weekly. The sub-teams meet with their sub-team leader weekly. There are weekly assignments. There are project managers. I'm in the middle there, that photo. And the project managers make sure that the questions are being answered, that everything is running smoothly, the assignments are on time. And you see the London Taxi Company officials, they meet during the 6-week session, they meet twice with each sub-team. So they will have 6 separate meetings, at least an hour long, where they are answering questions and they are reviewing some of the strategy and analysis that team members have come up with so that they can adjust. And it has been a case, and this is just like the real world and why we love this program. You know, in the 4th week, they will have their 2nd meeting with management, and they've received feedback which has caused them to completely reverse course because the company has said, you know what, I think what you're doing is a great idea and I'd like to see you do this. And then, you know, in 2 weeks, they have to finish a report that they present to management. And in the case of the London Taxi Company, they wanted a global view of the auto industry in 2025. And of course, you know what's happening there with Uber is changing the whole landscape there. There's a lot of government involvement too in terms of transportation and taxi industry. And so we did the analysis, and you'll see here Peter Johansson, the CEO of the London Taxi Company, was really pleased. And I love this for the photo here. What we also offer is to our company sponsors is the ability to take a small subgroup of the Alpha team and to present their findings to the senior management of these companies sponsor. And every company has taken us up on this. So we have been to visit the London Taxi Company here, also in Silicon Valley, obviously in Nigeria and Tanzania to make these presentations. And it's a wonderful, as you can imagine, it's a wonderful experience. Again, leadership, communication skills development, and we've had MBA students that have been involved in this process, and they've said they've never even done a presentation in front of an audience like this. So it's a valuable experience. And in the case of the London Taxi Company, I don't know if you're familiar with the iconic black London Taxi, although I'm not sure this photo is quite the color. But they build all of their taxis by hand. And as we went through the tour of the manufacturing facility, one thing that you noticed is there's not a barcode to be found. Everything is in bins, and literally a clipboard with all the paper documentation follows the car from station to station as it is built by hand, and things are marked on the clipboard. So it was a wonderful tour and learning experience. And clearly, the London Taxi Company was very happy with the results of this report. In fact, they shifted some of their priority based on the analysis that the team did. And that brings me to the end. I want to thank everyone for listening to me go on about the program, the Global Scholars Program. And this last slide has links for more information, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much, Ira. So there are a couple questions, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So with the Alpha teams, how are people selected for the Alpha teams, and what have been some of the, can you talk about any of the results that have come out of them for some of these companies, the problem that they were trying to solve?
Oh, sure, absolutely. And I mentioned some a little bit in the closing about the London Taxi Company. But, let me tell you a little bit about how we pick people. And I should also say that some of our closed courses are same way we select. For the alpha teams, you have to apply. And in the case of we've had actually 600 applicants for 21 positions in terms of the Rosello and the Jobberman alpha teams. And what we do is it depends on the company sponsor and what their goal is. So in the case of Rosello in Tanzania, they really want to understand how they break out of their local market and which markets do they go to next in the continent, in Africa, and also outside of Africa, where should they go immediately? Well, you know, and if you look at the enterprise software market, you know that Europe and the US is highly saturated. You're dealing with competitors that are well established, like Microsoft, Oracle, and SAP. And so where do you go to leverage local expertise? Clearly, Africa is a good market. We identified some markets in Asia as well as Eastern Europe for them. But Africa really was the focus of this. And what was great about this one, and I can talk a little bit about the makeup, is obviously when we selected the team, we wanted people who were living and on the ground. So we could bring to bear on these research projects local expertise. And in the case of the London Taxi Company, we've had people obviously who can speak to experience about taking cabs in Singapore and other parts of the world. But in the case of Rosello and others, we really bring the team together based on the requirements of that company sponsor. And then we try and expand the membership so that we're getting a lot of new information or different views. So it won't entirely be people from Africa. We identified other markets that we're interested in. We brought in people there. But I also wanted to point out that what's great about the Alpha team is it's a pathway to employment. So the members of this team, and it's a talent search for the company sponsors. So you know, a great example is Rosello. They're a 5-year-old company, or they were at the time we did this work for them, and they're a startup, and they didn't have the funding to hire people from the Alpha team, but they were really impressed with the work. And what they did is they formed an advisory council, and they brought on 4 people from the Alpha team to be that advisory council. And then actually a couple of months ago, we found out that they hired one of the members, and that person is leading their expansion into South Africa. So that is, you know, a wonderful story. We like to hear those stories and many more. And that's really the goal of the Alpha team. It's a great experience. Lisa, you're on mute.
Thank you. So if a company wants to work with you to try an Alpha team approach to solve a business problem, how does that process work?
Well, we first of all, I should note that, and I apologize for this, all our programs are free to members. So if you're a Global Scholar member, if you're a university, it's free to sign up. If you're an individual member, it's free. It's free to participate in any and to take any of our programs. That said, we do need funding. We are a nonprofit. So for a company that is interested in an Alpha team, we charge approximately anywhere from $100,000 to $150,000, basically the cost. And we work with companies too. There are ways to lower the cost. Obviously, travel is a portion of that, but we need funding for that. And in the case, in some cases, we've had foundations that have funded the work. So the work we've done in Africa, for example, was funded by the Rockefeller Foundation. And we're in the process of talking to other foundations. But in the case of Carbon, that work was supported by one of their investors. And again, you know, it's a great. What we've discovered is the work is it's equal. I would perhaps not the same as hiring McKinsey, but it's very close. You're doing something good. Obviously, you're helping to train a future generation of business leaders. You're identifying talent. And you're probably not paying the expensive McKinsey consultants.
And bringing in global perspectives too.
Absolutely.
So along those same lines, actually, so how do you facilitate, you know, social interactions and collaboration in such a globally dispersed group?
Very good question. And, as you know, picking the right time is always a challenge. So, I've been on the calls at 2 in the morning, as well as other people. So we spread the pain. Let me just say that. But collaboration, it's interesting. I think it's almost organic with the way I think NovoEd. Again, to thank you for the way you've obviously set it up, and our approach, because I use the term high touch. We don't throw people at assignments. So the Alpha team, we don't say here's the assignment and we'll see you in 6 weeks. We are very involved. So we break it down into small groups of teams. Even the platform management course where we had 400. I forget the number of teams, but we typically will break people into teams of anywhere. 7 is the right number. We've gone a little larger depending on the setup or the number of people in the course. But we have mentors that are intimately involved. They're engaged. They're very excited about doing this. They're typically people who have retired at the end of their career. Some are actively involved. Actually, none of them have really retired. They're all kind of working maybe part-time. But my point is that there's a lot of business experience, and there are people who want to do this because you wouldn't take this on unless you're really excited about it. And we meet. We're constantly involved. We make sure we have assignments that facilitate teamwork and peer review. So we always approach this with, what is the assignment we can give? What's the review process, the peer review process? How do we get the teams involved? How frequently do they meet? And we give them the tools. So we provide, it's not just NovoEd, we provide Zoom accounts so that people can communicate video via video conference.
Yeah, and one other thing I'll add is that for team assignments, there's a team workspace on NovoEd that learners can use to schedule synchronous, video hangouts with each other. They can type messages back and forth. They can share documents. So, yeah, it's always a challenge. I know, facilitating geographically diverse groups, but it's worth it,
It really is. And you'll see, the other thing we do is we post using NovoEd. We will post questions that we think will stimulate discussion. And it's so wonderful to see people who are participating in this take over and start to share. And what we do is typically we'll start a course and an Alpha team with resources. Here's additional reading material. And then what we will do is say, if you've got additional or more relevant local information, please share it with the group. And we see that happening. We see people, commenting on work, very thoughtful comments. That was one of my concerns. Typically, you don't want to offend people. You want to do constructive. But what I was concerned about is I didn't want people just giving like 3 words, oh, good work or something, or nice job. You really want it to be constructive. And look, you have people like that, but you see the ones that really use NovoEd or approach effectively, and they're the ones that really benefit from this, and it's rewarding to see.
Great. So a couple more questions have just come in. For the Alpha teams, are the interns chosen by the sponsor organizations or by CGE from among global scholars, or how does that work?
Sure, we select them, but we also allow we let the sponsor company know who we've selected. We give them a little bit of idea about who they are. Mainly if they're working, their job title, their students, and their location. We haven't had a case where the company said, no, we want to mix or shift this. We do a pretty thorough job. We have a review process, and it's really quick. So we'll ask maybe 15 questions. And most of them are the basic questions like, location, your email, that sort of stuff. And then we'll include 2 or 3 short answer questions, maybe 250 words. And they'll be typically, how do you intend on applying what you've learned from the Alpha team, or what do you bring to the Alpha team? And honestly, those 2 questions are where we have all of us at CGE. We're a very small shop. So all of us get on, we review the applications. Depending, when we had 600, we had to review it at about 4 different stages. We read all the reviews, but it's those written out questions that just give us a sense of that person, and typically is what informs us. But we'll use that also, again, going back to the company sponsor and the assignment. If it's a 3D printing company like Carbon, and we see someone has manufacturing experience or has experience in 3D printing, that's probably a great candidate to be involved with it. So we try and focus that. We also will look for the mix to make sure the mix is right. And that's not just geographic, that's also cultural and work experience.
Great. Last question. This is a good one. What is the faculty member's role in a collaborative environment? And so I'm thinking that, this can be framed maybe like an instructor versus a facilitator.
Okay, so an instructor versus a facilitator. And also, let me talk a little bit also, faculty members are students too, in a sense. So a instructor obviously is just that. So in the case of the platform management, what we did is, what was so wonderful about the program, we had Olayinka David West, who is a professor at Lagos Business School. She taught, has done a lot of work in Africa on platform business models. She taught 1 week. Jeff Parker, who is part of a 3-person author of platform management, one of the leading books on the subject, and he's at Dartmouth now, he taught a week. And so they will, they will bring their expertise, obviously. And I should say also a little bit about that lesson. It's a flipped lesson. So they will pre-record a video. You can download it at your leisure. And then we have a 1-hour session where there'll be either an additional 15 minutes of new information. But then that's really the opportunity for all the participants in the course to ask questions. So facilitators, those are really typically not academics. Those facilitators might be TAs. So they are really just as they would function in the classroom. They're there to help us to make sure the assignments are out, to maybe do a little bit of the monitoring of the chat sessions, to make sure that the instructors know that they have questions they need to answer. Same for the mentors in an alpha team. Now, in participating in an alpha team, academic faculty are just equal to any member of the alpha team. They do not get any special status. In fact, we consciously, when you look at the leadership positions, we have leaders of sub-teams and we have editors that work on each sub-team. We fill those posts with students because it's an opportunity to improve their leadership skills. But we've had people, in fact, Olayinka David West from Lagos was a alpha team member on the London Taxi Company. That's how she found us. And she participated in it and really has come and been involved, obviously, with a lot of different programs. And we typically do not have, we will have 1 or 2 faculty members.
Perfect, thank you. So I think that does it for questions, but I just wanted to thank you again for joining us. I think this has been incredibly informative. If people want to find out more about the Center for Global Enterprise and their global learning programs, you can visit thecge.net. And if you'd like to learn more about NovaWed, you can visit us at novawed.com, and you can see Ira's contact information here as well as my contact information. Ira, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.